was walking down the bustling sidewalks of New York beneath scaffolding that surrounded the city almost like a steel cage, a layer between what is and what's still becoming. There are muffled sounds all around me, but one phrase kept ringing loudly in my ears as if I were wearing a cheap pair of noise-canceling headphones. I kept hearing it, this one sentence uttered over and over that I heard earlier that day by somebody I respected and thought was on my side. Suddenly, my shoulder got bumped hard, and what should have been just an everyday city annoyance felt like an affront. Does anybody see me? For the second time that day, I felt invisible. As I whipped around to see who delivered that rude bump, I caught a glimpse of myself in a full-length store window, just a flicker, but enough to remind me of how fragmented I felt and how fragmented I must have appeared to my mentor earlier that day, like she could only see me in pieces. Instinctively, I reached for my ear to secure the earring that had nearly fallen out, and I felt the one-of-a-kind piece that I made myself, a mixture of leather, gold, and fine gemstones. A little bit edgy, a little bit refined, a reflection of the parts of me I was still trying to reconcile. At the time, I was nearly 30 years old, but I was still mistaken as a traditional undergrad student on the first day of every class. I had a PhD, publications, a career trajectory. I was on my way. Then, almost out of nowhere, I started designing and making jewelry. It began as a creative outlet, though quickly became a passion. I would spend hours wandering through jewelry supply shops, running my fingers over strands of beads and choosing between gauges of sterling silver wire and links of gold-filled chain. It lit a spark within me. And sparks have a way of kind of tugging at us, don't they? Quietly at first, and then loudly until we can't ignore them anymore. Have you experienced that? Yeah. I started thinking, maybe this jewelry thing can become something even bigger, but I wasn't sure. It reminded me of a concept that I learned back in grad school called moratorium. It's this in-between phase where you're still trying things out and exploring possible paths, not quite ready to lock into one identity or career. And it was in that space of possibility that I worked up the courage to tell my academic career mentor that I was considering pursuing a creative career instead. Now, this woman was small in stature, but big in influence, and a mixture between sweet and stern. And she paused for a moment, considered me, and then said, "That can be your avocation, not your vocation." In other words, that's a fine little hobby, but don't take it too seriously. Don't let it distract you from the thing you studied 10 years to do. That wasn't the reaction I was hoping for. Although I get it now. She wasn't trying to be dismissive. She was trying to protect me from walking away from the career success that seemed sure to come if only I stayed the course. She wanted me to conform. But conformity, while arguably comfortable, isn't always right. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a now famous conformity experiment. He brought participants into a room with a group of actors who were serving as decoys. Now everyone was shown a series of lines and asked to match which ones were the same length. And the correct answer was obvious. But when the group of actors started purposefully choosing the wrong answers just to sway the participants, most participants conformed, at least once, even when they knew it wasn't correct. Why? Because standing alone, even when you know you're right, feels riskier than simply staying with the group. And that's what can happen with our sparks. Even if they light us up, we're tempted to dim them just to fit in. So let me ask you, when was the last time you ignored a spark? And not because you didn't want it, but because it didn't fit what others have come to expect of you or who you are even planning to be. Stepping away from a previous version of ourselves feels risky when we've spent years building a whole internal framework to hold up who we believe we are. I call it our identity scaffolding. It's those roles, routines, expectations, degrees, titles, promotions, home, car status, or anything else that we've built over time to help support us and make us feel secure. It's almost like city scaffolding. If you've ever walked through New York City or other major city, you've probably seen them. Those metal frameworks kind of hugging the sides of buildings. They go up during construction and seem to stay forever. You may have found yourself walking under the same scaffolding day after day thinking, what are they even doing up there? Are they ever going to take that down? The same is true with our identity scaffolding. At first, it is helpful. It provides structure while we're figuring things out. It sets boundaries and goals for us. And then time passes, life shifts, and we grow. And yet, the scaffolding stays. Even after the renovation is long finished, even after we've kind of outgrown the version of ourselves that was built to support, we keep it up. Just in case, just for safety. When a spark comes, it can test the supports we've come to rely on, and that can feel like a threat to that stability and force us to either rely on the old scaffolding or build it up even more. But if we're brave enough to remove the scaffolding, we begin to see the full building beneath and new doors that we couldn't see before. And sometimes we open those doors and we find parts of ourselves that don't match the old blueprint. We see the truth of who we are strong enough to stand even without the supports we've come to rely on. Now, removing that scaffolding takes more than just bravery, though. It takes recognizing where synergy and strategy meet. It takes being well synced. It takes what I call simultaneity. Simultaneity is the ability to integrate multiple seemingly conflicting truths, identities, and/or passions into a cohesive whole. And not by choosing one over the other, but by allowing them to enrich each other. Like a therapist who also writes novels and uses storytelling and metaphor to help clients process different emotions. Or a data analyst whose love for structure fuels their music production by translating data patterns into rhythms. It's about being grounded and curious, serious and playful, both and instead of either or. And while exploring this idea may seem liberating, it's rarely encouraged. We're taught to fear contradiction, to make clear choices. Essentially, we're told to grow up. We're taught to keep our creativity over here, our credentials over there, our curiosities behind closed doors. But when we do that, it's like living in a house full of tiny rooms separated by walls we didn't even mean to build. We think it keeps us organized because everything has its own place. On the contrary, it actually impairs our vision. We lose sight of how the things that we kind of love and the things that truly light us up could work together in the same life design. Why don't we choose an open floor plan instead? A space where our passions, talents, and curiosities can mingle, crudité in hand, flowing freely, creating something altogether new. But we're conditioned to believe that embracing our multiple truths is being scattered or indecisive, when in fact it's about being layered and growing, because simultaneity, it's where our growth lives. When we embrace simultaneity, we stop wasting energy trying to choose between different parts of ourselves. We create possibilities that didn't exist when our identities were siloed. We feel lighter and freer, finally in alignment with who we are. It isn't about doing everything. It's about being everything that you already are. That's the real power of simultaneity. Now I know. Letting your full self show up sounds great, in theory. But what happens when something unexpected asks you to prove it? I'm reminded of a 4th of July cookout on a warm summer evening in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was sitting on the deck with my tiny graduate school cohort when all of a sudden, I was startled by something that I saw out of the corner of my eye. A flash of light, a flicker. My body instantly tensed. A split second later, there was a sudden hiss, a crackle. And before my brain could make sense of it, my instincts took over. I leapt to my feet, thinking only about getting back inside to safety, and ran straight into the screen door. Boom. Face first. I felt a flood of emotion, shock, embarrassment, and then sheer relief that it was just a sparkler. A sparkler, y'all. Unbeknownst to me, the host had lit it as a surprise. A tiny spark meant to delight us. But fireworks weren't on the agenda, and my nervous system did not get the memo. Now, that moment could have been just a funny story to retell you today. Oh, and I assure you, I still have not lived it down. Because, as luck would have it, I happened to marry one of the 4 people who had the misfortune, or maybe the pleasure, I don't know, of seeing me bounce off the screen like a cartoon character. I mean, the only thing that was missing was boing. But that moment became something much more. It became a metaphor, and not just for fear of the unknown, but for the ways that we lose sight of who we are. You can't see your reflection in a screen door. There's no glass. You can just vaguely see what's on the other side of it. And sometimes that's the real barrier. Not what's blocking your way, but what's keeping you from seeing yourself clearly and kind of colliding with the parts of yourself that you've been trying to look past. That night on the deck didn't just leave me with a mesh imprint across my forehead. It left me with a question that I want to ask you today. What might be possible if you treated sparks not as threats or disruptions, but as invitations to expand? You don't have to choose between who you've been and who you're becoming. You can honor both identities, the one that got you here and the one that's carrying you forward. Do you remember when I mentioned that day earlier when I was walking through the streets of New York with the energy and the sounds of the city surrounding me? Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of myself in one of those tall glass storefront windows underneath the scaffolding. And wearing my colorful outfit and my handmade earrings, I saw a distorted image of myself looking back. The artist, the academic, the consultant, in separate window panes, each self was trying to kind of morph together into a cohesive whole. And for the first time, I realized just how fragmented I felt. But once I allowed myself to see the possibility of embracing all of my identities, I knew that I couldn't wait for permission. I had to do the work myself, to follow the sparks that tugged at me wherever they led me, because I didn't want to live a life of regret. In fact, in one study of regret, researchers found that 76% of participants said that their biggest regret in life, their biggest regret, was not failing to meet societal expectations. It was failing to become the person they truly wanted to be. For me, I did eventually pursue jewelry design while working in academia. And now when I coach leaders, I don't leave my past selves behind. I build with them, using the insights I've gained as a psychologist, the perspective I use as a photographer, the jeweler's eye I have for hidden beauty and brilliance, and the strategic lens I use as an advisor. They're all part of the mosaic that I bring to my coaching when I encourage and support my clients in following their sparks too. And now, I encourage you. Don't be part of that 76%. Let your spark lead you towards the self and the life that you've been quietly imagining all along. And when you do, even just a little, something will shift. By integrating your passions, talents, and contradictions into a self that feels authentic and whole, you'll begin to design a life that reflects who you want to be versus who you think others want you to be. And that's what matters. So how do you move forward? You learn to trust the spark, even if it's inconvenient. And it doesn't have to make sense, not to them, only to you. You don't need a full plan. You don't need permission. You just need to take one tiny, courageous step forward to build momentum. And maybe even before that step, let's just pause together. Hold two of your truths in front of you. Now, you probably have more, but let's just start with two. Your passion, what excites you, what you lose track of time doing, and your practicality. What are you just good at and it makes sense, even if it's not that exciting? And see what they might ignite when they come together. And that spark, it may start small, barely noticeable, just a flicker. But don't underestimate what a spark can become, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's not out there, it's already inside of you. It's a quiet declaration that says, you are here. Not where others expected you to be, not where the past left you, not where the plan said you should land. Here, holding your truths, owning your spark. Right now is the moment, and it's yours. Can you see the spark? Ignite it.